I'm a psychologist. I've spent decades studying attachment theory, neuroscience, and behavioral patterns. And I'm going to tell you something that will make some people very uncomfortable. Sudden loss of interest isn't random. It isn't mysterious. And it's almost never about you the way you think it is. So if you're here because someone disappeared on you, if you've been ghosted or left confused wondering what you did wrong, stay with me. Because by the end of this, you're going to understand more about human behavior than most people learn in a lifetime. And to those critics who say I'm too direct, too harsh, too unwilling to sugarcoat reality, you're absolutely right. Because people deserve the truth more than they deserve comfortable lies. When someone loses interest suddenly, the first thing you need to understand is this. Their brain chemistry has changed. Not metaphorically, literally. In the early stages of attraction, what we call limerence, the brain is flooded with dopamine, norepinephrine, and phenylethylamine. This is the same neurochemical cocktail you get from cocaine. I'm not being dramatic. The brain scans are identical. When someone is in that early stage of interest, they're essentially experiencing a drug-induced high every time they interact with you. Their pupils dilate. Their heart rate increases. They experience intrusive thoughts. They can't stop thinking about you. They check their phone obsessively. They feel euphoric. This is not love. This is addiction. And like all addictions, it has a predictable timeline. For most people, this limerence phase lasts between 18 months and 3 years. But here's what nobody tells you. For some people, it lasts 3 weeks, 3 days, 3 hours. Because the brain builds tolerance, just like any drug. So when someone loses interest suddenly, what's often happening is that their neurochemical high is wearing off. The dopamine receptors are downregulating. The novelty, which is what actually triggers that dopamine release, is gone. And without that chemical reward, their motivation to pursue you evaporates. This is why people lose interest suddenly. The drug wore off, and they never signed up for the actual relationship. They signed up for the high. The fantasy versus reality collapse. Let me tell you about a patient I worked with. Brilliant woman, successful, self-aware. She met someone, and within 2 weeks, he was talking about their future together. Marriage, children, the house they'd buy. She was cautious. She said, "Isn't this moving too fast?" And he said, "When you know, you know." 3 months later, he disappeared. Completely. Blocked her everywhere. She came to me asking, "What did I do wrong?" And I told her, "You didn't do anything wrong. He fell in love with a fantasy, and you became real." This is one of the most common patterns I see. People don't lose interest in you. They lose interest in the fantasy they projected onto you. In the beginning, you're a blank canvas. They don't know your flaws yet, your complications, your humanity. So they project their ideal partner onto you. They see what they want to see. They ignore red flags because those don't fit the fantasy. You say something slightly awkward, in their mind, it's endearing. You have a bad day, they find it vulnerable and attractive. You disagree with them, it's exciting, it's passion. But then reality starts seeping in. You're not always available because you have your own life. Fantasy disrupted. You have needs and expectations. Fantasy disrupted. You reveal something about your past, your family, your complexity as a human being. Fantasy disrupted. And suddenly, the person who was so intensely interested is gone. Because they didn't want a real person. They wanted a fantasy. And you had the audacity to be human. Here's what makes this particularly insidious. The faster and more intensely someone comes on in the beginning, the more likely this pattern is occurring. Because genuine interest builds gradually as someone actually gets to know you. Fantasy-based interest is immediate and intense because it requires no actual knowledge of who you are. When someone love bombs you, excessive attention, premature future planning, intense declarations, that's not a sign of deep connection. That's a red flag that they're relating to a fantasy, not to you. Avoidant attachment and the intimacy threshold. Now we need to talk about attachment theory, because this explains more sudden loss of interest than almost anything else. Approximately 40% of adults have insecure attachment styles. Of those, a significant portion are avoidant. And avoidant attachment has a very specific pattern that looks exactly like sudden loss of interest. Here's how it works. Avoidant individuals are attracted to the pursuit. the challenge, the uncertainty. When they're chasing you, when they're uncertain if they can have you, their anxiety is low and their attraction is high. They're engaged. They're interested. They seem invested. But the moment they secure you, the moment you're clearly interested back, the moment you show vulnerability, the moment the relationship starts to feel real and intimate, their nervous system perceives this as danger, not consciously. They don't think, "Oh no, intimacy, I must flee." Their body goes into threat response. They start feeling claustrophobic, suffocated, trapped. They start noticing all your flaws. They start craving distance. This is called the intimacy threshold, and for avoidant individuals, it's very real and very low. So what you experience is this. Everything is going great, they're pursuing you, it feels mutual and exciting, and then you reciprocate fully, or you have a vulnerable conversation, or you start naturally progressing toward more commitment, and suddenly they're distant, cold, pulling away. Often, they'll just disappear entirely. This feels sudden to you. But to them, it's been building as an internal panic response since the moment things started feeling too close. And here's what's important to understand. This is not your fault, but it's also not entirely their fault. Attachment styles are formed in childhood, often before age 3. They're deep neurological patterns. They can be changed, but only with significant therapeutic work and self-awareness. Most avoidant individuals are not self-aware about this pattern. They genuinely don't understand why they lose interest. They'll tell you the spark faded or something felt off. But what's really happening is their nervous system is screaming, "Danger, too close, must escape." When you're trying to figure out what you did wrong, the answer is often nothing. You triggered their intimacy threshold simply by being available, vulnerable, and interested. The very things that create healthy relationships are the things that activate their threat response. Knowing this doesn't mean you should chase them, try to fix them, or accommodate their pattern. Because you cannot have a healthy relationship with someone who perceives intimacy as danger unless they're actively working on that pattern in therapy, and most people aren't. The opportunistic interest. Now let's talk about something darker. Sometimes people were never genuinely interested in you as a person. You were an opportunity for validation, for ego boost, for entertainment, for sex, for financial support, for social status, for filling time until something better came along. I've worked with people who maintained entire relationships, months, even years, while fundamentally viewing the other person as a placeholder. They were interested in what you could provide, not in who you are, and the moment they no longer needed what you provided, or the moment they found a better source, they lost interest. Suddenly, completely. Here's how you identify this pattern retrospectively. Their interest was conditional and transactional. They were engaged when you were providing something, attention, validation, support, but disengaged when you needed something back. They kept you uncertain, breadcrumbing, mixed signals. Just enough attention to keep you invested, never enough to feel secure. Because uncertainty keeps you working for their approval. They had one foot out the door the entire time. They never fully integrated you into their life. You never met their friends or their family, or you were kept in a separate compartment. And when they lost interest suddenly, there was often someone else, immediately, or they'd already been cultivating other options. Because to them, you were never irreplaceable. You were functional. This is not about your worth. This is about their character. Opportunistic people rely on your assumption of good faith. They rely on you believing that their interest is genuine, that their words match their intentions. So, when someone's actions don't match their words, when their interest is inconsistent and conditional, when you feel like you're always auditioning for their approval, believe that pattern, because opportunistic interest always reveals itself through inconsistency. Moving forward. What you need to know. So what do you do with all of this information? First, you stop blaming yourself. The sudden loss of interest is rarely about your fundamental worth as a person. It's about neurochemistry, attachment patterns, character defects, or incompatibility, none of which you can control. Second, you become ruthlessly protective of your energy and attention. You stop giving unlimited benefit of the doubt. You watch what people do, not what they say. You notice patterns early. And when you see red flags, inconsistency, love bombing, unavailability, disrespect, you believe them and you exit. Third, you do your own internal work. Examine your attachment style. Go to therapy. Understand your patterns. Learn what you're unconsciously selecting for. Because if you keep attracting the same type of person, you have to ask yourself what you're broadcasting that draws them in. Fourth, you get comfortable with the fact that most connections won't work out. And that's not failure. That's discernment. You're looking for compatibility, not just chemistry. You're looking for character, not just charisma. And that means most people won't be a match. That's normal. That's healthy. What healthy interest actually looks like. You need to know what healthy, sustainable interest actually looks like. Because if you don't have a clear picture of healthy, you'll keep accepting unhealthy. Healthy interest is consistent, not intense then distant, not hot then cold. Consistent. You don't wonder where you stand. You're not anxious about their feelings. They show up reliably. Healthy interest is reciprocal. You're both investing. You're both initiating. You're both making effort. Healthy interest builds gradually as people actually get to know each other. It's not instant obsession. It's not love bombing. It's genuine curiosity about who you are, sustained over time. Healthy interest includes respect for your boundaries, your autonomy, your separate life. Healthy interest survives conflict and disappointment. When there's a disagreement or someone has a bad day or shows a flaw, the interest doesn't evaporate, because it was never based on fantasy perfection. Healthy interest includes clear communication about intentions. You're not guessing what they want. They tell you, and their actions align with their words. If you're not experiencing this, don't settle. Don't convince yourself that anxiety and uncertainty and working for someone's approval is passion. It's not. It's toxicity. Final words. When someone loses interest in you suddenly, it is almost never a reflection of your fundamental worth as a person. It's a reflection of their neurochemistry, their attachment wounds, their character, their readiness, or their capacity. Your job is not to be so perfect that people never lose interest. Your job is to be authentic, to have standards, to protect your energy, and to invest in people who are capable of showing up for real connection. Some people will lose interest. Let them go. Because anyone who loses interest suddenly was never seeing you clearly in the first place. You want someone who sees you, really sees you, flaws and complications and humanity included, and chooses to stay, chooses to invest, chooses to build. That person exists. But you won't find them if you're busy chasing people who were never available in the first place. So raise your standards, trust your instincts, do your internal work, and stop accepting sudden loss of interest as something you need to prevent or fix. It's information. Use it. Protect yourself. And move on to people who are actually ready for what you're offering. You are not too much. You are not enough. You are simply looking for someone operating at your level of emotional maturity and readiness. And to my critics who think I'm too harsh, people don't need more comfort. They need clarity. They need